There's a strange paradox in thinking deeply. The more clearly you see, the more alone you become. The sharper your understanding grows, the quieter the room gets when you speak. Picture yourself in a crowded marketplace of minds. You offer an insight, something you've carefully unwrapped in the silence of your thoughts. And the faces around you harden. Not with understanding, with something else, something colder. It's not just in your head. Deep thinkers have always faced that ridicule, not because they couldn't communicate it well, but because they see what others feel, too overwhelmed to even think about. From ancient Athens to the laboratories of the 20th century, Socrates to Tesla, Galileo to Turing, brilliant minds have faced the same reception: rejection, silence, exile. This isn't coincidence, it's pattern. A deep, ancient pattern woven into human psychology and biology. Today we're diving into the darkness of why intelligence triggers fear, not to place blame, but to understand, and through understanding, to find freedom. Consider this: standing beside someone physically powerful doesn't diminish you. Encountering someone wealthier might spark envy, but rarely shame. But intellectual superiority? That cuts differently. Your mind becomes an unwanted mirror. Not the soft focus kind that flatters, the unforgiving kind. The one that reveals every crack in the foundation, every comfortable delusion, every gap between who people believe they are and what their thinking actually reveals. Psychologists call this the mirror effect. Deep thinkers don't merely present ideas, they inadvertently expose the boundaries of others' understanding. And that exposure is rarely forgiven. Here's why. We construct our identity from our thoughts, our beliefs, our comprehension of reality. Physical strength lives outside us. Wealth is circumstantial. But our cognitive capacity, our very instrument for making sense of existence, is central to who we believe we are. When your intelligence challenges someone's worldview, when it reveals the limitations they can't see in themselves, their brain registers it as an assault on identity itself. This triggers cognitive dissonance, that grinding mental friction when evidence contradicts belief, when reality refuses to match our self-image. And the brain despises this friction, so it makes a choice: comfort over truth, the soothing lie over the sharp reality. You become the threat, not their limitations. You. Reflect on your own experience. Have you introduced a layered thought into casual conversation and watched people's eyes glaze over? Noticed how quickly topics shift away from depth towards shallow ground? This isn't accident, it's psychological self-defense. When deep thinking enters the room, something in people activates, a protective response designed to shield the ego from unbearable revelations. This mechanism isn't weakness, it's human architecture, a survival feature that guards the self against destabilizing truths. But knowing this doesn't soften the sting. Not yet. Because this defense doesn't live only in abstract psychology. It lives in flesh, in neurons, in the ancient parts of the brain that remember when exile meant death. Buried deep in the brain's architecture, beneath language, beneath conscious thought, sits the amygdala, ancient machinery, threat detector, alarm system. Neuroscience reveals something unsettling. When people encounter intellectual superiority, their amygdala ignites, the same region that screams danger when facing physical threats. Your depth of thought triggers the same neural circuits as a predator stalking through high grass. Intelligence activates fear. Why would evolution wire us this way? For millennia, survival hinged not on intellectual brilliance, but on tribal acceptance. Our ancestors survived in groups where harmony meant protection. Rejection from the tribe meant exposure, vulnerability, death. So human brains evolved to prioritize social belonging over intellectual honesty. Those ancestors who chose acceptance over truth-telling, they lived long enough to pass on their genes. The ones who couldn't stop revealing uncomfortable realities, many vanished from the genetic line. Modern contexts, boardrooms, dinner parties, online forums, become tribal territories where the amygdala still sounds ancient alarms. Social psychology research reveals something crucial. The rejection of intellectual depth depends heavily on context. In private, one-on-one conversations, people's threat response diminishes. But in groups, the defensive reaction intensifies dramatically. Why this difference? Because group settings transform the equation. It's no longer just about your intelligence. It's about hierarchies, about how others witness the comparison, about status protection in front of an audience. When someone feels intellectually outmatched in a group, instinct drives them to diminish or exile the threat to preserve their standing. This explains why private conversations can hold genuine depth, while group dynamics flatten everything to comfortable shallows. That cold distance you felt? It's not imagined. It's neurological. It's real. Your insight triggered ancient defense systems you never meant to activate. You believed you were illuminating something. They experienced danger, but neural biology has accomplices. The mind's architecture includes sophisticated defenses that work in concert with these primal responses. The mind doesn't merely react to intellectual challenge, it fortifies against it. Through cognitive biases, invisible armor protecting the ego from threatening truths. The Dunning-Kruger effect represents psychology's cruelest irony. Those with the least competence possess the most confidence. Meanwhile, the genuinely intelligent doubt themselves relentlessly. Incompetence creates blindness to itself. Those lacking expertise can't recognize expertise in themselves or others, because recognizing it requires the very capability they lack. When you speak from depth, they don't perceive wisdom. They perceive confusion. Their broken internal compass points confidently in the wrong direction, and they trust it completely. Status quo bias reveals the brain's fierce attachment to familiar territory. Known ideas feel safe, pre-tested, pre-approved, requiring no exhausting worldview renovation. Your disruptive insight isn't mere information, it's a demand for cognitive reconstruction. And minds resist reconstruction the way bodies resist surgery. Intelligence introduces thoughts that destabilize comfortable certainties. The brain labels this destabilization as threat. The backfire effect might be the most maddening mechanism of all. Provide evidence contradicting someone's beliefs, and often their conviction intensifies. The challenge doesn't open minds, it reinforces defensive walls. People dig trenches deeper. You intended to illuminate, they experienced attack. Confirmation bias drives the relentless search for belief-confirming information while filtering out contradictions. Evidence that challenges doesn't get processed. It gets neutralized, dismissed, memory hold. You're not battling an individual. You're battling an ecosystem of evolved cognitive defenses, treating deep thinking as a pathogen requiring isolation and elimination. Simplicity offers comfort, not wrestling with contradictory ideas simultaneously, not questioning foundational assumptions, not admitting the mental maps we navigate by are incomplete, possibly wrong. Complexity exhausts, nuance demands, uncertainty terrifies, so minds choose the easy story, the comfortable framework, clear heroes and villains, sound bites over essays, hot takes over careful analysis. And in this current era, these tendencies aren't merely personal. They've been weaponized, amplified, monetized at industrial scale. Digital technology didn't create humanity's resistance to depth, but it built cathedrals to worship it. The algorithms governing our attention have a singular commandment: maximize engagement. Not truth, not understanding, not the patient cultivation of wisdom. Engagement. What drives engagement? Raw emotion, tribal outrage, moral certainty, simplistic takedowns, righteous fury, the narcotic comfort of confirmation, sophisticated analysis, careful nuance, evidence-based reasoning. These are algorithmic poison. They don't spread virally. They don't generate the clicks, shares, and dopamine pulses that keep eyes glued to screens. Examine what goes viral. Reductive sound bites, catchy distortions, Emotion-first content that sacrifices accuracy for impact. The more sophisticated your thinking, the harder it becomes to compress into platform-friendly packets. So what survives the algorithmic filter? Simplification, strategic distortion, impact over integrity. Echo chambers aren't accidental formations, they're engineered environments, intellectual safe spaces where challenging perspectives never penetrate, where every voice validates existing beliefs, where mental growth suffocates in the warm bath of endless affirmation. Feeds algorithmically curated to reinforce current views, building walls against new understanding. Your thoughtful analysis, researched, nuanced, carefully constructed. 3 likes before it drowns beneath waves of reactive noise. Systems reward entertainment over enlightenment, making intellectual acceptance increasingly difficult. This represents digital age amplification of ancient human defenses. Biological and psychological barriers to challenging thought, now supercharged by technologies profiting from intellectual stagnation. So where does this leave those who cannot help but think deeply? Those who see further, process more completely, question more thoroughly? History shows we're not the first to walk this path, and one philosopher mapped the territory centuries ago. Arthur Schopenhauer, philosopher of unflinching honesty, proposed something radical. Intelligence isn't blessing, it's burden. While others celebrated intellectual capacity as gateway to success, Schopenhauer argued the inverse. Greater intelligence guarantees greater struggle with society. He built his philosophy around what he called the will, a blind, irrational force driving human behaviour. Most people, he observed, operate through the will to live, pursuing pleasure, comfort, survival above all else. But highly intelligent minds function differently. They develop what we might call the will to truth, an unquenchable drive to understand reality, regardless of comfort, regardless of cost. Most humans seek pleasure, avoid difficult realities. Deep thinkers seek understanding, even when it leads straight into pain and isolation. This creates fundamental incompatibility. Where most find meaning through relationships, entertainment, routine comforts, deep thinkers often perceive these as distractions from more profound existential questions. Schopenhauer believed increasing understanding of human nature makes relating to others progressively harder. Deep thinkers see through the performance, the status games, the social theatre, the polite fabrications. Those who value truth over appearance struggle to participate without crushing boredom or disconnection. He compared intelligence to heightened awareness, a blessing that wears the mask of curse. His observation: significant intellect tends toward isolation. The logic was simple. Greater understanding means less ignorance to hide behind. More awareness of reality's flaws means less capacity for comfortable happiness. Deeper thinking means deeper loneliness. For Schopenhauer, intelligence and contentment existed in inverse relationship. He believed ignorance, not wisdom, unlocked genuine happiness. But he didn't merely diagnose the wound, he offered medicine. Embrace isolation. Schopenhauer reframed solitude from punishment to privilege. One can only be oneself in solitude. Without loving solitude, one cannot love freedom. Liberation from exhausting translation of thoughts into acceptable forms. Liberation from constant reaction monitoring. Liberation from perpetually dimming your light so others feel less shadowed. Seek intellectual kinship. Rather than forcing fit with mainstream culture, find those operating on your frequency through literature, philosophy, genuine intellectual community. Quality of understanding matters more than quantity of acquaintance. Navigate strategically. Not every context or person can receive depth. Preserve profound insights for those capable of appreciating them. Learn discernment about when, where, and with whom to reveal what you see. Understanding the mechanism, the biology, psychology, cognitive architecture, digital amplification, transforms rejection's nature. It's not personal, not about worth, not even truly about your ideas. It's a complex web of evolutionary programming, cognitive protection systems, and modern technologies creating an environment hostile to what you cannot stop doing: thinking deeply. Your mind isn't cursed, it operates on a different frequency. Not everyone can or wants to tune in, and that's acceptable. History keeps writing the same story in different ink. Socrates dedicated his life to questioning accepted beliefs, challenging people toward critical examination of their own thinking. Rather than celebration, he received a trial on charges of corrupting youth, his actual transgression, teaching people to think independently. Offered exile, he chose poison instead of abandoning principle. His final declaration: life without examination holds no value. His death delivered a message. Society eliminates those who challenge foundational beliefs. Nikola Tesla envisioned free global energy, wireless power transmission, technological leaps that could have revolutionized civilization. But power structures, industrialists profiting from electricity sales, perceived his vision as existential threat. His concept of freely available energy got systematically dismantled. Despite unparalleled brilliance, he died isolated in a modest hotel room, forgotten and impoverished, while others built empires from his appropriated innovations. His trajectory demonstrates how society often elevates business over visionary genius. These minds shared parallel fates. They introduced ideas generations ahead of contemporary understanding. They faced rejection, mockery, punishment during their lifetimes. Their concepts later became foundations of human advancement. Society doesn't fear intelligence itself. It fears what intelligence represents: transformation. Their isolation wasn't failure. It was the cost of seeing clearly in a world preferring comfortable blindness. If you felt like an outsider for thinking differently, understand this: your experience isn't unique to you. It's documented across cultures, throughout centuries, by researchers and philosophers, and every deep thinker who preceded you. Your intelligence isn't malfunction. Others' defensive responses aren't moral failures. It's simply human condition, beautiful and tragic in equal measure. But does this condemn deep thinkers to perpetual isolation? No. It means navigating society with understanding. Make depth accessible. As one physicist noted, explaining simply reveals true understanding. Learn to communicate complexity without overwhelming, without sacrificing essence. Find your frequency. Seek those who welcome depth through literature, communities, intellectual spaces. The right few matter infinitely more than the indifferent multitude. Choose your moments. As Schopenhauer observed, talent hits visible targets. Genius aims at targets others cannot see. Not everyone is prepared to perceive what you perceive. This is acceptable. Now you understand the forces arrayed against deep thinking: biological, psychological, cultural, algorithmic. And through understanding comes freedom. Freedom to think deeply without personalizing rejection. Freedom to pursue truth without requiring validation from those preferring comfort. Freedom to embrace solitude that depth requires, not as exile, but as sanctuary. Society needs deep thinkers. It simply doesn't always recognize this need. While culture may fear those who think profoundly, deep thinkers propel humanity forward. You aren't broken, you're simply perceiving reality with unusual clarity. And that isn't curse, it's gift you're finally learning to comprehend.